Hello everyone, Brandon Despia here, and I'm back with another TED Talk for DracoTail Branded. As you guys already know by watching this channel, you guys know that I really like branded DracoTail, and I think it's the best way to play branded, and it's probably the best way to play DracoTail as well, no matter whether you're running a 60 card deck or something smaller. I want to talk about, as clearly as I can, my reasons for believing this to be the case, and why I feel like we may be seeing some people starting to slowly warm up to the idea of adding more branded. And I think it has something to do with a light spellcaster that we all know so well. Again, if you like the video and the content here, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. I would love to hear more from you and your thoughts on branded DracoTail. What does the branded engine do that makes it work so well with DracoTail? We know that DracoTail thrives on monsters that double up on utility outside of the fusion materials, like hand traps or effects when sent to the grave, graveyard effects in general. So how does branded fit into all of that? Branded already has multiple monsters that interact well with the graveyard and want to be there to create interaction on the opponent's turn, like this Fallen Albaz right here, or enhances the grind game of DracoTail, such as the Bestial Sereneer, Cartesia, or Albion the Shrouded Dragon. They don't mind being fused away in the DracoTail engine because they keep creating value there, especially now that our Thalion is so busted. We know that Cartesia is also a quick fuse effect that can come back into our hand if a fusion monster gets sent to the graveyard, which we can now use as extra fusion material. That has already been clear. The Bestial Sereneer can access our branded engine, or at the very least send a card like Branded Opening to protect our fusion monsters from destruction. For example, the same thing with Albion the Shrouded Dragon, while also giving us an additional card to draw if we really need to. In addition, there are multiple extra deck monsters in Branded that add resources to the hand or field for DracoTail to use in future turns. Because of this, the DracoTail monsters now have an engine that bridges to them and then supplies them with additional resources that enhance their board breaking ability and enhance their own main strategy. For example, Mirrorjade provides non-targeting banishment that DracoTail don't have on the field outside of sending monsters to the graveyard, like the Mululu. Let's talk about some other cards that are also extremely ridiculous. We just talked about Cartesia's graveyard effect. But what people don't talk about when it comes to DracoTail outside of the branded variant is Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. If you are a deck that runs a DracoTail deck, of course, if you are a DracoTail deck that runs not only Cartesia, but runs multiple copies of, let's say, Veiler, accessing this through something like a Hieratic Seal and one copy of Fallen of Albaz isn't really far off in your future. To be honest, I don't see why people aren't running this more often, especially when they're also running something like Spirit with Eyes of Blue in many DracoTail builds to get to seals in the first place. Against non-dragon decks, being able to seal into Fallen of Albaz against Yummy, for example, being able to go into Albion the Sanctifier Dragon through your red Albion and then hitting them with a Spirit could be all you need to win. I don't understand why that package isn't thought of too much. It used to be for a lot of Blue Eyes variants. Some people did think of that, and some people topped well with it. But for some reason, it's kind of fallen out of memory. And let's not forget Titanic Lad. Titanic Lad can add a monster from the deck to the hand during the end phase. Most people think about special summoning cards like Albaz or Quem, but you're more than welcome to add the monster to your hand as well, especially if you need an extra monster for fusion material. Branded suite of spells and traps. They offer a way to bridge into the DracoTail engine while drawing the attention of opponents' hand traps and interactions, and offers additional ways to dodge target negation through their quick play spells and monster effects. The branded engine offers Branded Opening to protect monsters. We already know about Quem and Cartesia in particular. Branded also gives you access to a searchable poly and brand it in white. People are really fond of using King of the Swamp to search for the one poly, while this can be played over and over again, brought back through Branded Retribution, then brought back again through something like Spriggan's Kit. Branded can also set up a decent board with High Spirits, while playing through Ash Blossom and removing that hand trap from the equation for DracoTail plays. These cards also enhance the end board of DracoTail, a deck that's normally low to the ground in terms of the end board it presents. Speaking of a more potent end board, we just mentioned it before, but last time I checked, Mirrorjade is still busted. So why can't you run this in that deck with an Albaz? It gives you access to a non-dragon or spellcaster fusion that wreaks a lot of havoc, and they can't secretary on this. I can see myself making an Albaz off of Seals and then going into a Mirrorjade, sending a Titaniclad, and having an extra monster in my hand during the end phase while also recurring the Cartesia in my graveyard. And don't get me started on the Sanctifier lock. As if I do recall correctly, a lot of people out there were calling for this card to be banned. You would imagine a card that is drawing that much attention would want to get used in more decks if possible. And now we have a deck that can potentially activate this, use this quite often. And when you combine that with the fact that the DracoTail decks already run Secretarion Dragon, you have a very potent combination of recursion with these two cards alone. This on your turn and Albion on your opponent's turn. Seems kind of ridiculous if you ask me, and I'm pretty sure plenty of decks can run this, just by simply adding one Albaz to their deck. Branded also solves many of DracoTail's problems. If you've seen recent videos from Jesse Cotton and Joshua Schmidt, they bring up points that can effectively be solved with Branded. For example, in a recent video, Jesse talks about DracoTail's matchup difficulty against K9, specifically Izuna and Ripper, because it must activate effects in the graveyard and hand to work. And he also mentions two schools of thought in regards to this. In order to handle that issue, you either cut down hand traps for more board breakers, which can effectively lose you potential on monsters for fusion material, or you overwhelm them with a flood of hand traps to force through with your Nibiru or Phimina. That's why, for the most part, it's always the right idea to fill your deck with hand traps if you're running a pure DracoTail deck. However, I believe you can do this and increase the potential end board with a small Branded package. Branded offers additional board breaking while also being monsters. So, you don't have to fill your deck with too many extra spells or traps while getting access to a better end board. Joshua also notes that the weakness in the DracoTail strategy is that the pure version runs into a problem with its spells and traps. What I mean by that is, in order to gain maximum value from your fusion material monsters, you want to be able to get your Rahu and get your Ketu through the effects of your DracoTail monsters. Having these cards already in your hand limits the potential of the DracoTail monsters to gain advantage. For example, since I already have the Rahu and Ketu in my hand, Malulu either gets me a trap or it gets me another copy of Rahu and Ketu, which seems redundant, doesn't it? Also, you don't ever want to see the traps in your hand in most scenarios. 60 card decks normally drown out your bricks. And a deck like Branded plays very well in a 60 card build. It has no issue with it whatsoever. In addition, Branded bridges into DracoTail through Malulu, so you don't even have to have these cards in your hand, which are less likely to be in your opening hand due to the larger deck count. And now you'll be able to safely go from Malulu off the Branded Fusion into your Ketu and your Rahu much more often. However, if you do have these in your hand, it's okay because Branded can use the multiple copies in your hand to pay for cards such as Fallen of Albaz and Branded Opening, and even cards like Lubellion the Searing Dragon. They can make use of those extra copies, and that way you can still use your Malulu to search for the ones that are in your deck. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into why I think Branded and DracoTail work so well, and why I think this will probably end up being what the best version of DracoTail will be in some form. While I do not think the best version of DracoTail in tournaments or at a YCS will end up being a 60-card version, what I do believe is going to happen is that we will get a version that will run a very, very small branded package. Something like this, for example, that you can get off your seals and go into more plays, making your seals even more powerful. Cards like Magnum are even more ridiculous, and boosting the power of the deck even further to make it a little bit stronger against the K9 Vanquisol deck, right? For example. Well, that's all I have for now. That's all I really wanted to say. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.